Well, yeah, first thing you asked me about was what my background was, and kind of, and I know everybody's got a different way to get into Lean or Six Sigma, So my background was, I came out of the textile industry back in the late '80s and '90s. So I was working there, and I went through college, and short story, NAFTA kind of collapsed all that, and so I found myself looking for work because I was laid off and didn't have a job, and so so I went through that, and I got hired on in an automotive plant, like a tier one automotive plant. So it was a completely radically different culture change, and not really for the positive. It was a little harsh. So, but the good news is because the culture wasn't all that great, they had a really strong training program, and they trained really in Lean, Six Sigma. And I remember this is around 93, 94. So it's that time period. Um, so they trained, and I was, at the time I wouldn't say I was unaware of it, but I didn't key on it. Is
What was your back? Yeah, what was your background in school?
I'm a business major, and all of my experience until I went to automotive was in textiles and actually towel making, terry cloth towels. You can believe that. So, so um, of course, I got to automotive, and it was super different. But I began working and learning the lean. That was kind of like modules that we had that was pre-recorded, and they're about 30 minutes or an hour a piece, and you would take it at the end. You take a test to say, "Hey, I understood this," but I took it, and it really kind of clicked with me, and I began trying to apply that as a supervisor and then as a department manager, and then I got to, the industrial engineering manager left, and again, I'm a business major, but they said, "Hey, you seem like you're pretty bright. Would you like to try industrial engineering?" I was like, "Okay, well, yeah, that sounds great. What is it?" And so again, they had some on the job training, so I got all the basics in industrial engineering trained for over the next year. Um, so that's where I got kind of started in lean and continuous improvement. And this company I worked for at the time was a private company. So two brothers owned the company. So every time we run a project that would improve productivity or decrease waste or scrap or off quality, they literally just made more money per part. And they just absolutely loved it. They weren't very nice, but they loved it. They're like, "Hey, bring me some more money." So it was pretty straightforward, and that was where I got my start with that. And I practiced all of the things that I learned. I practiced them and so I was, like I said, I was an industrial engineering manager there for a while. And my job was to set standards, time studies, parts and material usage and process flows. When I was in assembly, I actually used a lot of the lean work. So back in that time frame, the Ford Explorer was a was hugely popular, and they had projected, to sell like tens of no, let's just say thousands of these things every month, and it wound up they were selling like 50,000 of these every month, some crazy amount of parts. So so it's kind of like that episode of SpongeBob, where Mr. Krabs pays SpongeBob to go out and catch jellyfish. I don't know if you've seen that, but he said, what about more don't you understand, SpongeBob? Well, this is the same way these guys were. So it's just about producing more and more and more. So my probably my crowning achievement there was actually increasing the Explorer assembly line productivity by 336% in 1 year. So which was just using lean tools. So that's kind of where my background started with lean and how I got into it.
Yeah, that's great. Was that also like required, or was your um, company driving that down, the use of those tools and methods, or it was just because it worked? How was that
No,
being
it
driven?
no, it was required. It was absolutely a requirement of your job, I'll not forget this because we had metrics that were set by our leadership at the time. And the truth of the matter is it was pretty harsh. And this was kind of their rule. The rule was as long as you improve every month, you get to keep your job. Yeah. So like 1% a month is it you keep your job forever. But it's the first time you go the other way, you need 2 or 3 months of that in a row gets you fired. And they were dead serious about it. So it wasn't anything positive about that. So if that answers your question, that's why I was saying it wasn't a super great environment.
Yeah, so the customer's driving a lot of that usage, but it also is working for the most part and you're learning these different
Mm-hmm.
skills. Okay. Did you
Oh,
go
yeah.
back to school for industrial engineering or are you just learning it on the job?
No, it was just literally on the job training. They had like a paid for, like they had a outside group they had bought training from in one of the modules, and it was actually like 6 or 10 modules. Hey, you take this, and this will teach you how to be an industrial engineer. So, and that's what I did, and that's where I learned how to do that. And it wasn't super complicated, but nevertheless, it was something I didn't understand, and I put that into practice as well, and that's kind of followed me along through my career. So when I went to work in the automotive industry, about 2 weeks later, my full-time job was finding another job, and it just it took me about 5 or 6 years to find another job. Actually, it wasn't that long; it just felt like 5 or 6 years. It was really more along the lines between like 93 and 97. So in December of 97, I had sent out just some resumes randomly, and one of them happened to land on the industrial engineer manager's desk at Interface through about four hands. And so this lady interviewed me and hired me, and of course I came to work at Interface then. Unbeknownst to her, she paid me almost double what I was making in the automotive place because I didn't mention to you earlier, but I was about to starve to death too, working there. But it was better than starving to death. About to starve to death is better than starving to death. So, so anyway, I got to Interface, and it was almost like it was such a big difference from a cultural standpoint that I went through a period of culture shock somewhat. Because it was not negative. It was very positive. They were working on continuous improvement heavily at the time and in continuous improvement mode. Their program at the time was called Quest, Quality Utilizing Employee Suggestions and Teamwork. And it was fairly well structured. It had kind of reached its pinnacle and was on the down end by the time I got here, or declining in popularity.
And that was 97, you said?
That was 97. Have you ever heard the story about the engineers at I think it was GE? The running joke was they hire the, I think maybe it's wrong, but it's a story anyway. At some company that they had the junior engineers would come in and they give them the project to frost the inside of a light bulb, a vacuum sealed light bulb.
Okay.
And and of course, the reason they gave him this project because it was a great joke, right? It was funny. They'd work on it for 3 months and wouldn't get anywhere. It was kind of putting them into place.
Yeah.
Until the guy actually invented a way to frost inside the light bulb. So anyway, that's kind of been a little bit of my experience at Interface. I think they gave me a project to improve beaming. It was a process to get yarn aligned on a big metal spool to be able to get a tufter, which is like a giant sewing machine with 1,000 needles, like side by side. So a beam fed yarn through these needles to make carpet, just like a sewing machine does. So and my job, my first major project was to improve beaming. And I went and worked on it for probably about 6 months. And I came to the conclusion that it wasn't much I could do to improve it other than just something marginal. So I went and asked, and this is before since then I've had a lot of innovation training and practice, and as you're well aware, scissor training. But at the time, I didn't have any of that. I had this Lean and Six Sigma skill set, an industrial engineering skill set, and, kind of limited experience because I was still relatively new in my career. So I began asking people, how would you produce this material? How would you produce carpet if you had, what's the ideal method? Every single one of them said the same thing. They said we would use a creel, which is basically something that keeps the yarn on the cardboard package. And instead of putting it onto a big metal beam, it would keep it on the package because it runs better. And then every single one of them also said, but we can't do that because it's too big. We can't fit it in our plant, all these things in our plant. So anyway, I took the time to sit down and say, well, what makes sense to me is if I had a big ball of yarn, it would all fit in this one spot. 500 pounds of yarn would be a ball, 5 foot tall and 5 foot around. So, and that's not very useful, but it gave me conceptually a way to say, hey, it'll fit in this spot. So can we fit it in this spot and still make it useful? Long story short, I came up with a different type of piece of equipment that was unbeknownst to me at the time, that was unique and proprietary. So, and of course, me again, not being very experienced, I thought, wow, everybody will see this idea and they'll think this is the best thing ever, and everybody will agree with me. That's exactly what I laughed at.
You were early in your career.
Absolutely. So I was just super naive. But I learned very quickly that that's not the way that works. So, but I would say that the prototype we built, I was able to get enough influence to build a prototype, put it on the machine and test it, and it worked as designed. So, and then of course, 5 years later, after every kind of resistance that you can imagine had been put in place, we finally got the process installed, which was it was very difficult. It was a traumatic time. I thought, it's kind of like out of the frying pan of automotive and into the fire of this new carpet making facility. But on the all, if I look at everything holistically, it was actually a really good experience and a really wonderful learning opportunity. So, and of course, it obviously builds a lot of confidence when you actually have some success. Anyway, but that's how I got into the carpet industry.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about Interface for those that might not know about it.
Well, you caught me at the perfect time, okay? Because literally this month is this 50th anniversary of Interface. Wow. It was established in April of 1973. It was so that's when it was first started, and we're celebrating that this month and of course this year. But Ray Anderson was the founder, and he came from another group here that was making carpet, and he saw some technology that he thought would fundamentally change how carpet was made. He just happened to see some patents when he was doing some research one day. He thought it was so promising that he decided that he would leave the company he was at and start a new company partnering with this group out of the UK called Carpets International. And he started there. And of course, it was run like any other company until about 1993 or 4. And some customers asked him what he was doing for the environment. And he got asked that a couple of times that year. And in his words, he didn't have an answer for it, because he was like, I don't know what do they want me to say? We're making money, we're doing great, but so he read a book by Paul Hawkins called The Ecology of Commerce. And when he read it, he described it as being a spear in the chest, that he was very convicted by, after reading the book, that he was doing business in a wrong way. So after that, literally, he called, I think like the next week after he read that, he called all of his board together and all of his senior executives and said, hey, we're going to be a sustainable company. Y'all get busy figuring out what that means. and I'm gonna help you, and I'm gonna make sure we get there. And of course, they all looked at each other and thought maybe it had a stroke or something, and because it was so radical at the time,
Yeah, at
Uh,
that time, that was unheard of. I think they're probably one of the first companies to, or at least large companies that have really made a sustainability pledge or something that says we're going to try to minimize our impact on the environment. That's talking, yeah, 30 years ago.
yeah, it was crazy, and of course, here I come rolling in about 1997, and they just really start getting this started. Um, but yeah, he was very much a visionary in that regard. Not only did he say, "Hey, we need to do this the right way," but when he started studying sustainability, he said, we got, we can't just do the right thing by the environment. We have to be economically viable, and we have to be, socially viable as well. So, and of course, they went about trying to figure out what that was. How do you find that? And back then, as you're probably aware of studying that time of history, and I was in the middle of living some of that time of history, and it was a different time where a lot of these definitions that we kind of take for granted now didn't exist. They were being formed, which is pretty cool. But I don't know, it was a little bit like living in the Wild West. You didn't know what was coming next,
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what interface has been about. And since then, so just name off some of the major milestones we've had in recent years. We completed our first mission, which was to be, short story is to be carbon neutral. So we were able to accomplish that in 2019, right before the pandemic kind of got started. And so that was one. And most recently, a lot of our new products coming out are actually carbon negative in what we're working with. And of course, we spend a lot of time evaluating our footprint as we're going through not just manufacturing, but supply chain and how our raw materials are made, how they're transported. And then we haven't really talked about the end of life part of it yet. So we haven't get, at least not that I'm aware of. I'm sure that somebody's talking about it in the face because there's a lot of people working on a lot of things. But some of our milestones have been pretty incredible. You can go to our website and get this without having to listen to me babble around about it. But we've decreased our water usage by like 85%, decreased our waste to landfill by 90%. Just some crazy numbers that you can't imagine happening at a company. And it was really it was not any one big thing. It was really about working diligently towards a goal over 30 years, if that makes sense. And of course, I've been here 25 of those years at Interface myself. So, and I was in different parts involved in some of it, and some of it I wasn't, But this is what happens when you get a group of people together with a common vision and mission that all are pursuing one thing.
And leadership support.
That's right. And you get, a leader that says, yeah, this is what we're going to do. This is the right thing to do, and we're going to do it because it's the right thing. Yeah. So,
what are some of the other roles that you've had, and what are you doing now?
Oh, well, like I said, I was hired as an industrial engineer, or maybe I didn't say that. So I did that for 3 or 4 years, and then they found out that I had an operations background, like an operations manager background. So I went into several different roles in operations management, and then I spent some time in IT as an ERP implementation specialist or functional analyst, I guess would be the closest thing that could be described. Spent 3 or 4 years doing that. I was exploring that as a career path until I found out that it was not what I really wanted to do. So it took me that long to get out of it after I decided I was going to do that. But so I worked some with our sustainability metrics at the time. After that, I spent some time in operational planning. So think about strategic planning, working in that arena or being responsible for that arena. And then for the last 12 years, 11, I guess, I've been in product development with different levels of responsibility there. So today I'm responsible for new product development, our destructive testing laboratory where we test new products, and then also commercial sampling. So think about the sales enablement arm from samples operation, a pick and pack sample operation. So that's what I do today. But I work with some really great people. We spent a ton of time and money investing in that training and really have some great leaders there. So I spend most of my time working on projects, coaching, mentoring, really trying to create opportunities for our people that I have responsibility for, and some other groups too that are interested. So that's what I really do day to day, is spend a lot of time, in our words, trying to create opportunities for people.
Yeah, I thought that was really great how much you kind of carve out time for personal development and learning skills, and then giving people the opportunity to pursue that, and but not making them or dictating that to them. It's like, here are some things you can learn if you want to move up and make a difference here. This is what it's going to take. Are you interested? And if not, no problem.
Yeah, no, you dead on. And it's interesting because I use my Lean Six Sigma skill set. Really more Lean than Six Sigma, but I'm not a purist, so we use whatever tools happens to work for us at the time. Whatever we can get to work. So we use that in the beginning to create a lot of margin, just like any good Lean or Six Sigma practitioner would, right? We look at the processes, we create margin, we improve reliability, so that we'll have that time, that space to actually create. And kind of like, so from a high level, we think of it like this. So you already got your money and these people are already here. What can we enable them to do? And again, you brought up a very good point. We do allow for choice, and we use a lot of the principles out of the book called Influencer and Tribal Leadership. We practice those. I practice them daily, and allowing for choice is one, because it creates we call it confirming commitment, or creates individual accountability and engagement. Because there are people who don't want that level of opportunity, or who just want to come to work every day and do their job and go back home. And here's the thing: we have jobs like that for people, but we also have jobs for people who want to. We create opportunities and roles and jobs for people who want to learn and grow. We'll make sure we provide that time on the job for them to learn and grow. And what we found is that whatever money we invest, we get back 3 or 4 or 5 times return on the money. Every time we invest in something, we get back. That's just kind of a minimum. We didn't really expect it, but that's what we can see from our data. Every time we work with the group, obviously we're using the influence we create. We encourage, and I use that influence to try to get people to take advantage of opportunities. It's the best we can measure. And this isn't formal, but this is us looking at engagement as any person would, and saying, are they actively engaged? Are they disengaged, or are they actively disengaged? So we have somewhere between 70 and 80% engagement in the areas that we offer this opportunities in. And when we say engagement, I don't mean that they're just doing what's on their job description. We define engagement as they're doing their best work by all means at the level they're capable of. Because people have different abilities and different levels of ability, right? So by saying best work, then that gets away from having a finite measurement, because what may be the best work for you may be different for me, because we have different skill sets, different experience, and different levels of training. So that's, I don't know if it's unique, but I haven't found other people that's doing this type of, or maybe thinking of it this way or working through it this way. I'd love to, because I'd love to compare notes with them, but it's kind of lonely sometimes when you're by yourself. But nevertheless, it's working good so far. We're getting some great results. And you're dead on. We use a lot of other influence techniques. One of the other big ones I practice almost every day is demonstrating sacrifice. So anytime you sacrifice your time, your money, your ego, or your priorities for someone else, then you have the opportunity to create influence with them. And in our case, we teach our leaders, and so I talk about creating influence with others, but to what end? Now, what's the end of creating influence? Now, I'm not trying to manipulate people, so we use social responsibility principles as our kind of like our plumb bob and our level. And we hold our leaders, and I hold myself to this, being accountable, transparent, ethical, and I'm required to respect the other stakeholders with whom I'm either going to engage or impact. So, and of course, there's three more, obviously, three more principles, as you know. So I'm trying to respect international norms of behavior, respect human rights. So the last one is respect for the rule of law. That's what outlaws don't remember that one. But these are the things we key on. So why would you create influence except if you're going to do the right thing with it, right? So now, for me personally, this aligns with my beliefs, which makes it very easy for me to follow. You know, I wouldn't be able to follow it if it was at odds with my personal beliefs. So, and the thing is that this is in line with most people's personal beliefs. It's aligned with most mission and vision statements. So it's a real easy way to give people some basic principles to follow that they can actually practice every day. And of course, obviously, the more you practice this, the better your culture gets, right? Because everybody generally wants to be treated the way they want to, you know, they want to be treated in a good way, and that's the way that you should expect them to treat others. I know that sounds a little bit far-fetched, but that's what we're doing.
Yeah, so. Yeah, it's amazing. And so, how would you say, like, being an interface allowed you to either tap into those personal beliefs, or do you think you brought that with you and they were able to try and pull that out of you in a work environment? Because I think a lot of people, unfortunately, don't feel like they can bring that part of them, or feel like they have to stifle some of that piece when they go to their job. And I think that not only are they interfacing accomplishments and sustainability, but also it ties in nicely with engagement and feeling like you can bring your full self to work. So how do you think that worked in connection with each other, or not? Maybe separate?
Well, here's the thing: is that it hasn't always worked here. But because I had a good lean skill set, this is why, and this is why I shared what I did at Lean Six Sigma World Conference, because I think people that have the Lean Six Sigma skill set already, or any type of continuous improvement skill set, let me just say it that way. And I won't just talk about just Lean Six Sigma.
Yeah.
But if you have that already, then you have the ability to create margin, at least economically, right? So when you're able to create economic margin, then a lot of times the easier sell is to create the margin and basically say, hey, I can create this margin. Can I keep some of this for myself? And as a rule, if you think about it, most people, even if you're talking to senior leaders, they're aware enough to know that, yes, I get the 80% and you keep the 20. Because otherwise you don't get the 80% again. That's how continuous improvement programs fail, right? So that's part of it, is you can use that. So just so you'll know, I don't necessarily have corporate level support. This was started in the middle. So I thought that the scissor process, or the scissor method, which is continual improvement for social responsibility, it filled a gap that I had in my skill set. So this is no egotistical statement here, okay? But this is just a fact. When I got to interface, and of course I'm a practicing Lean Six Sigma person, so I have a lot of experience, and I feel very confident of being able to pretty much just go anywhere I want to and be able to create some kind of improvement method, right? And that's all economic. Now, so I'm very comfortable in that realm. And since I work at Interface and everybody talks about sustainability, which most people they equate sustainability with environment, and then oh yeah, and it's also economic. But what they don't do is you never hear them mention social. Sorry, they might mention social, but if you start actually trying to find something social that they're doing, it's hard to find, right? So, well, I had this same gap. You know how I recognized this was really interesting is that I came back from vacation. I love to take my vacation around, Thanksgiving and Christmas because it's wintertime. I like being outside and I like to hunt and stay outside and work in a farm, and I came back to work, and I'd had all this time by myself and I was being retrospective and kind of introverted and just thinking through. So I was looking at the projects. This was 2015. And I had attempted 6 projects, yet I was only successful with 3. And I started off like everybody else does, and I was trying to understand why the other 3 failed. And I thought, well, it ain't the idea. The idea was pretty sound. It's, was there any kind of issue with the equipment, or was there any kind of issue environmentally? So I actually took sustainability just in a conceptual form and said, all right, if this was going to be a sustainable solution, if these projects, I'm going to just evaluate them through that lens. Economically, is this project viable? Yes. Environmentally, is this project viable? Yes. Socially, is this project viable? So it occurred to me then, I did not even have a means to measure it or understand that. So in that course, for me, this is a gap in understanding. So as a learner, I said, okay, well, I got to figure out some way to fill this gap. So I began searching for a way to fill this gap. And, through Providence, I ran into Holly Ducksworth at a Lean Six Sigma conference. Actually, it's the Lean Six Sigma World Conference, believe it or not. And luckily, I was in front of her speaking. And I was talking about what I knew about Lean Six Sigma and sustainability. And then she went up right behind me speaking, and she was talking about the PhD level work she had done and the book she just written on sustainability using Lean Six Sigma. Because if she had went in front of me, I would have just left like I was sick. Because obviously she knew more about it than I had ever dreamed that was even imaginable. And believe it or not, after the event, she actually came up to me and said, hey, would you be interested in taking this training? And I'll be honest, I was a little bit, I don't know what the right word is for it, but intimidated might have been the right word because she knew so much more about it than me. But she was just as polite and nice. And of course, through her, I met Andrea Hoffmeyer. And my question was, hey, she said, hey, would you be interested in taking this training? And I said, sure. How much does it cost? She said, oh, no, it's free if you just give us your feedback. So, because I don't have any money. So I started taking that training in 2016, 15, 16, and this was a beta. So since then, they started off with a black belt level course, which is the first one I take. I was in the beta of that. And then they came up with a master black belt level course. I took that. And I was the only non-belt in the class, believe it or not, in both those classes. And but again, it hit dead center what I needed from an understanding standpoint. So I learned how to align stakeholders, to recognize resistance, to a lot of things that's common with Six Sigma. Understand risk and create risk mitigation plans, and the. But what so over time we've been practicing this inside of our product development group. Again, without really corporate support, but our corporate folks love what we're doing. They love the results we're getting, but they don't really understand a lot of what we're doing all the time. And and granted, so they've been really nice to allow us the autonomy to move forward and keep pursuing this and to keep training and to keep funding us. Of course, we're doing our part and being accountable to make sure we keep producing returns so we can have the level of autonomy we have to experiment and move down this road. And the beginning of that was project success, but we've evolved a lot since then into some things that it was unexpected for me. And I don't want to just keep on jabbering. It seems like you got a question.
Yeah, I do. I was just trying to back up a little with the types of projects you're doing. So you're in design development role or R&D, I think a little bit of both, right? So as people are coming through with new products, you're helping with these projects to try and do that. So you're almost way early on this to try and set up some of the social responsibility, sustainability piece into the product, and also probably bringing some of your Lean Six Sigma hat that says, if we do it this way, it's going to be more efficient, it's going to be less cost, it's going to run better, it's going to have higher yields, it's going to be faster turnaround times. So way earlier than most people are practicing Lean and Six Sigma methods. And then you're adding into this social responsibility piece, sustainability on top of that, which I think is very unique. And so I just wanted to kind of make sure that was really clear for everybody. And I don't know if there's like an example of project you could share that help people understand kind of the type of projects you do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Probably some of the best projects, and just to give you some experience insight here. One of the So I worked with a design studio, a custom design studio, which is in the building. Now, as I say, I work with them as a facilitator to try to help them improve their processes. And the most interesting thing about that is they had no preconceived knowledge of Lean or Six Sigma. They didn't have any idea what it meant, what it was. They didn't understand any of the terms I used. So I would have to be super generic in trying to apply this with them. But then for the most refreshing blessing you can ever have, they absolutely had zero resistance to any of the ideas. They would just say, okay, how do you think we should solve this problem? So for instance, one part they had their orders were coming in and they were basically unorganized. So they set up a Kanban pull system in a custom design studio, and it worked textbook like any pull Kanban should work. There was no resistance. They thought it was the best thing since sliced bread, and they used it, and it was extremely effective. So it took them so just to give you some results here, their average turnaround time was 4 to 5 days, and it took them down to next day delivery from a custom design standpoint. It cut out 2 whole working days out of the week, every week, which they spent on project work and collaboration. And of course, obviously doing more custom work because obviously their quality of work improved as well. So it's just a wonderful experience. And then of course in the standard product realm, which is what I'm responsible for, we've spent all this time in training to make sure that so in the last 7 years, we've set up or actually 8 now, we've set up a rapid prototyping facility where the primary focus to begin with was enabling stakeholders, the designers themselves, to build better products. And we did everything that, so to your point, the role that we have of our people today, and it's structured very differently than you would think. So in our area, all of our people are salaried, not exempt, which is very different from an hourly type, workforce, even though that's where they came from. So this is a grand experiment to be able to have them where the motivation was to do the right thing correctly every time and attempt to improve it. So they've been working with their designers so that back in that day, it would take us anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks to get a product trial completed. Today, we can complete the product trials in the same day from the design request, and which gives our designers that means more time, iterations to try to figure out how to make better products. And of course, with a high level of training and investment we have with our people, their skill set is surged, not just understanding how to use the equipment better, but also understanding how to engage their stakeholders better from a customer mindset. So those are two of the examples in design and product development that I think are pretty unique. I wouldn't say they were, the custom design studio was pretty easy. It was actually a breath of fresh air compared to some of the others. But so those are two good examples. And the other thing I can't leave out of this conversation is the cultural shift that we have. So, we're not using it today, but at the time we used the Gallup Strength Finders engagement survey. So in the 3 years between 2015, actually it was 2015, 2019, so it was 4 years, but we were only working on this for 2 of it. So we were able to improve the scores on this engagement survey by about 30% in our area. And it was really because of the work we're doing with investing and training them to understand how to be socially responsible, and then really setting a new set of expectations around that. So, which that was the first clue. So we went from saying, all right, hey, yay, we can predict when we're going to be successful with projects. We can predict when they're going to fail, so we can be really successful with project management. Wait a minute. There's this other higher level thing, which is, we can purposefully improve culture by running projects. So since then, I've been working on studying how do you purposefully transform culture. And that's what I spend a lot of my time doing today is I work with the leaders I have in these areas to shift culture over time. We use, again, I'm not a purist, so I use Lean Six Sigma. We use Scissor. We use influencer, tribal leadership. And of course, you're aware we use multiple innovation frameworks like trees and biomimicry for innovation sessions. But over the last, just to give you some stats here, over the last 8 years, so today in product development, we have 7 black belts and 6 master black belts, including myself. And then we have, another dozen green belts. And then we have the samples area, the commercial samples area. They're the newest group, and we're hopeful to start our training of them this month about half of them in the green belt training. And part of this training is not necessarily that they're going to facilitate projects, but that they're just really learning the language that we're talking. Because I don't know if you can, I'm kind of being more generic in talking with you, but we have our own unique language now that we talk when we use these terms and principles, which is pretty cool. But when you're here and you're part of this team, but it's also kind of confusing when you're talking to people that's outside of our group. So, but language is a big deal for us as well. We're trying to create opportunities for people, and we encourage people to take initiative. And we have and of course, with retention of our employees, we've only had one person to leave out of our product development team since then, and it was for promotion. I guess technically we had 2 more leave, but they were promoted internally, internal to interface. So, and we hold those up as, this is how you win. We if you do the right thing, you show initiative, you work hard, you take the training, you apply yourself, then you can get ahead. So, and it's important, I think, that people see good examples like that, because it creates hope and encouragement for people to follow along. But the culture piece has been a huge change for us. And I've learned so much through this process that, it's almost like I'm a different person than I was 7 or 8 years ago now.
Yeah, and I think when we met, we were in, I think it was Durango. I can't remember if we were
Mhm.
in training sessions together with Sherpa and learning about scissor, continual
Mhm.
improvement, social responsibility.
Mhm.
Um, and then we met in offsite Durango, Colorado,
Mhm.
and we've continued to stay in touch and speak at conferences, usually at the
Oh,
same sessions because we're talking about similar topics. Um, so,
that's right.
can you share a little bit more on the scissor training and some of the tools and concepts and methods and things that you applied, just to give people a little overview on that? And I'll link all this stuff up with links and interface and their success and influencer model and things like that. People want to learn more, but
Hey, a lot of this too, you can find on my LinkedIn profile. You can find links and case studies to everything I'm talking about. Kind of you can see articles that I've published out there just in random magazines. So it's an easy way to kind of get a good flavor for it. The Sherpa Institute is the people that I work with. They provide us in our training. Of course, Andrew is a mentor for me to try to understand. And we spend a lot of time now trying to actually move forward with some of this, trying to advance it, evolve it to make it better. So just give you, this will sound real familiar to Six Sigma or Lean practitioners. We use a form of stakeholder engagement, like stakeholder ID and stakeholder mapping in the beginning. We focus on the subjects of social responsibility as 7 subjects. So we target those subjects when we're working on projects because we want to move, we want to practice this in a socially responsible manner. So we create a clear objective, and we use many of the same tools you do in Six Sigma. We look at like X matrix. We use that to actually understand how to link these pieces together. We use project narratives and also project charters, like a lot of other people use. In the focus and function stage, so we use the SWOT analysis. We're big with that. We create in the objective or the function phase, focus phase, we use what we call a trees, IFR, ideal final result. So think about, sometimes you might hear people call that an ideal state or a future state. We look at that, start trying to form that. We use value function diagrams, FMEAs. We call ours SR FMEAs, but basically it's the same thing as failure modes and effect analysis. Um, like I said, we also use several different cause and effect tools like causal analysis. Um, we use several different like 2x2 analysis type work, materiality analysis, and things like that. We use primarily trees, TRIZ, the theory of inventive problem solving, as our primary innovation framework, but we also apply biomimicry effectively as well. And then finally, in the R phase, what we do is rather than say specific tools we use, what we do is we focus on metrics that change behavior. The primary goal is what is the behavior we're trying to change, and what metric are we going to use to encourage that change? That makes sense. So those are some of the tools, and I have a nice, neat list here that probably would be handy to put out there too. I think you can probably find this on my LinkedIn profile as well without too much
yeah, yeah.
trouble. But
I think the SOFARE approach is the similar model of DMAIC, right? And
mm-hmm.
so it's just a different wording and different some similar tools, but also additional tools that are good when you're working on something broader, especially like the stakeholders think it's so critical about understanding all the players involved up front because these issues are broad and that's what makes them challenging and maybe difficult, but when we get all the right people together and understand the voice of all the stakeholders, not just your direct customer, but your community and your employees and the families of the employees, all those things are relevant. And to then be able to understand that early before we get way down and then find out, oh, this isn't going to work and we're getting resistance over here. Already done all that hard work up front. that makes things a little easier to then come up with sustainable solutions that drive actions and results that have a good systems level impact, right? And it's not
Oh yeah.
isolated to one area. It's actually helping the environment and the community and the employees and the culture and the bottom line results. Like, I think it's a shift in kind of even more upfront planning and understanding of what's going on so that you can end up with much more powerful, successful results. But you have to have that desire to want to
Right.
impact those areas, and that's rare, unfortunately.
Well,
So not there yet.
what's interesting about this too is that one of the, and I explain this, because I speak about this a lot. And one of the ways, you have to kind of get to the point. I know it's hard for you to believe I can get to the point, but nevertheless. So one of the things up front, one of the big differences I noticed between DMAIC focuses on the customer. It's customer centric and focused. So one of the big advantages in SoFair is that when you consider the needs of more than, the customer is a stakeholder, but then there's many more. What happens is that really opens up the options for innovation and continuous improvement. Because a lot of times, or at least I always felt practicing like DMAIC and Lean Six Sigma, that I was kind of confined because, it had to be around the customer, right? But there's many paths to success once you kind of broaden it out to look at and absorb all of the stakeholders. Plus, facilitating this type of method and getting in a broader group of stakeholders to facilitate. I know you can do that with DMAIC as well, but when you bring in a broader group, like I was talking about, bringing in design and marketing, and some of these areas that were unfamiliar to me when I was in operations, then you get a very different group of perspectives, and you get a much broader ability. You know how when you practice value stream mapping or process mapping, one of the big benefits when you practice that is that everybody gets to the same level of understanding by the end of it, right? Or similar at least. You kind of even it up. Well, it's the same thing here, but even broader. So there's a much broader appreciation for other skill sets and work, and much less of a tendency to minimize it or to minimize someone's knowledge because it's not like your knowledge. So it really gives you an opportunity to include and to amplify voices. And just like any other good facilitator, right? You get in here when you got people that are quiet. We only have a few rules for this, but one of them is if you attend, you have to participate. We don't allow spectators, and that's not unique to us, or to our method, but because we want your input, and you should be here because you want to be here, not because you're required or you feel compelled or you trying to report on this to someone else who might have sent you. You need to be a participant if you're going to be here and actively engage. So yeah, there's a big difference. And then again, one of the other big differences, in my opinion, from practicing this and DMAIC is at the end, the metrics focused on behavioral change, having a few metrics that are very much focused on changing the behavior. That again, remember, it's just focus, right? The F is for focus and function. So in part of our training, in one of our special courses, the innovation specialist course, we're taught how to create functional models. So when we talk about function, we literally are talking about like functional programming. We're going to target a very specific component or function or group of functions, and we're going to focus our efforts because a shotgun doesn't have much effect at 100 yards, and a rifle does. So what we do is we'll pick out a very few things that we carefully measure. We create lots of ideas, and then we evaluate them brutally, and we get the ideas that are just to use some of the common criteria that impact the most stakeholders but involve the fewest. Because the more stakeholders you get involved, the harder it is, right?
That's right.
And they cost the least, and they give us the most bang for our buck. And then, of course, we talk about, is this going to advance socially responsible principles? Is this a sustainable solution? Can you say that this solution provides economic, environmental, and social value? It's just a yes or no question. So these are all criteria we've used because we've run probably over the last 8, 10 years, 7 years. Let's just be conservative, say 7 years. We probably have ran 45 or 50 formal projects in this manner that we, because remember, it's about practicing this and getting better at it. And we've had a whole battery of criteria to measure these solutions. I mean, we want to get those ones that are the best solutions, the sustainable solutions, ones that really make a difference in that way. Because if we're going to be a sustainable company, how can we not be implementing sustainable solutions, right? And it's got to be including the social piece. And from my own personal experience, I had a huge gap in understanding of the social piece. And now that I understand this, I very much now I feel like I am enabled. Matter of fact, I say that most projects I work on are just purely, I focus on the social aspects first, whereas in the past, I would avoid those social problems. And matter of fact, I say this in a lot of places I speak. I go as far as to say this just as a challenge to people. I, I know personally, I've seen many capital projects be put in place and approved so that people wouldn't have to deal with social issues. You spend capital to avoid social problems, and clearly it doesn't work, right? You've seen it before too, I'm sure. Everybody has, I think. And you say, why they do that? And they say, oh, it's going to solve this customer problem. And you're like, it ain't going to solve that problem. They're just throwing money down a hole, just putting in a pot and burning it or something. Anyway, so I don't know. I hope I answered your questions about that. I kind of get lost in my own talking.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that, is there anything else you wanted to discuss or talk around this topic? Because I think you hit pretty good summary of interface and its efforts and sustainability and how you fit into that role and your process improvement background, and then bringing it through into early phase development work, and then adding in this piece of social responsibility to it and some of the tools and methods there. Yeah, I think it's, like I said, I don't, if I know of other people, or maybe people watching this or listening to this have some similar background, let's reach out to Billy and make that connection, because I don't think there's a lot of people doing that yet. And I think that's, you've already shared why that's so important and why it's so powerful. And so I think that's awesome and it's exciting.
Well, and here's the thing: is I would love for people to understand how to do this, because, and the reason I would like for other people to understand this, because it's been such a blessing to me. I mean, I feel very confident in my ability to solve problems. It doesn't matter which realm of sustainability it's in now, and this wasn't true 5 years ago. I was still just beginning to learn how to use this, and I believe in individuals who practice this or who learn this. It really increases your self-assurance and your confidence of being able to truly engage with problems that are complex, especially socially complex problems, which people tend to avoid. It gives you confidence to engage, knowing full well that there are solutions out there that can be put in place. And that if you're willing to go the distance and put in the effort, there's a method that can actually help you be successful along these lines. Everything's about effort, right? If you just want to put the effort in, I can be, a rock star and have a great guitar skills if I want to spend 10 hours a day playing the guitar, but I don't want to do that.
That's right.
So yeah, I think I've shared everything that I want to. If people want to talk with me about this, obviously you can tell I like talking about it. I'm very passionate about it. And I think it'd be a big benefit for a lot of people. And you're right. I do think this is an emerging skill set. I see more and more evidence that, this is a great way. And I'm very grateful to the Sherpa group for and God for putting me in the right place and right time to get this done, because it has been a big blessing to me and to others. And it gives you a much better sense of, I wouldn't say self-worth, but maybe that's the right word. It gives you gives you the ability, to understand problems, and I have no fear of problems or problem statements. It's just a matter of which one I want to spend my time working on today. And as I said, I do tons of coaching and mentoring of the groups that, we got people practicing at all sorts of levels with this. And of course, that's good for them. And one thing I didn't mention that we focus on a lot, but this might be important, we focus a lot on creating mutually beneficial goals, goals that are good in this order, goals that are good for the person, their function, the company, and our mission. Just they need to, you can't have something that is unbalanced. Like you can't be saying, hey, you need to do, take one for the team, because that just creates resentment. You can't have somebody doing everything that's good for them, because that's called stealing. So you got to have these balanced goals out there. And the most promising thing about this is almost everybody that we engage internally with this, or even externally, coached a lot of people outside of Interface. As a general rule, even if they don't use this method like verbatim when they're doing this, they learn enough to actually this improves their practice, and it improves it in a socially responsible way or sustainable way, which I think is really important. We need more people like you, which, by the way, I didn't say this, but clearly I'm a huge fan of what you're doing. Lean Six Sigma for Good. I thought that was awesome. I think it still is awesome, but your first book, which I thought it was really cool what you put together there. So, and kind of a visionary type approach, because I know you're you're out on your own without an organization to hide behind, right? So you kind of putting it out there yourself, which is pretty brave to do, and I think it was a good thing. I think you've done a lot of good, impacting and influencing people like me. So,
well, no, I think that your work and applying and working this and learning methods and practice, I think that's exciting. And I'd love to be at a point where all my projects have a sustainable social responsibility focus on that. And I think, like you said, it feels, I think what came to mind when you were talking about that was kind of like, we all want to have an impact, right? And feel like we're making a difference, and to know that, the work you're doing has all good, properties to these projects, and it's inspiring and probably motivating, and makes you feel like you're doing really rewarding work. And I think that's on top of the benefits and success you're having with these projects. It's a win-win all the way around. And I think people should definitely check out your LinkedIn profile, look at your projects, and then connect with you, reach out, ask questions. You're always open to sharing, and that's what I love about people doing a lot of this work, is we're just happy to share and talk to people and help them along. So,
well, I love to talk. Bless your heart. But no, please, if anybody's interested, please reach out to me. I'd be glad to talk to them about it, what we're doing. And you don't necessarily need corporate support. It'd be great if you can get it, but you don't necessarily need corporate support. Okay, you know this because you're doing this your own self, to be successful and have a big impact on people. And you don't ever know who you're going to influence and impact, who might have create a really profound change, right?
Yep.
So that's one of the reasons to keep doing this type of work. But anyway, and hey, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. I love to talk about this, as you can tell. So,
and I'll put the link to your profile up there. But if they're searching on LinkedIn, what would they type in? Billy Ingram, Billy O. Ingram, William.
Yeah, it's actually. So my name is William Oscar Ingram III. But if you search for Billy Ingram on LinkedIn, you'll get a bunch of hits. But if you search Billy Ingram Interface, you'll only get one.
All right.
So that's the easiest way.
Billy Ingram Interface. That sounds good. All right. And I'll put up your all the links we talked about, and anything else you think of that might be helpful. Really appreciate your time. It was great connecting again. And we'll run across each other soon. And
thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Billy.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.